Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jenny and I'm starting my November reading wrap up today. Today is November 27th. So I think it's safe to say that this is the latest in a month I have ever started my reading wrap up before. I'm not sure what happened to November. I'm not sure what happened to me in November in terms of reading. I just have not been, I've been reading, but I haven't been finishing. And I think part of that is almost every book I picked is over 300 pages. One of them is almost 700 pages. And I just haven't been going through them fast, which is funny because I was on track all year to be over my reading goal. And now this month has completely derailed me and potentially put me behind for December, which is hilarious. Of course, when you decide to read a big book, which I am doing this month, that can derail you. But yeah, I was a little shocked to realize that there was no mid-month. I would usually be finishing a book mid-month, and I have not finished one. But I have finished my audiobook, and I'm going to tell you about it right now, and that is Golem Girl by Riva Lehrer. So I listened to this on audio, and it was narrated by Riva Lehrer, the author. Riva Lehrer is a disabled artist. She was born with spina bifida in the 1960s, and she tells you her story. This is her biography. This is her life. So she talks about her disability, about spina bifida, about all the operations she had. She had multiple operations from the time she was born until she probably is still having them, because spina bifida is such an invasive thing, and it's so I'm not going to get into the details of what spina bifida is. If you want to know what that is, then you can look that up. But what Riva does really well is she does talk a lot about her medical history. She talks a lot about her parents and the toll that this took on her parents and her family in general. She talks about her education. She was educated at a school for children with disabilities, which nowadays is kind of this, I don't want to say controversial, but it's a kind of a debatable route, So I think back in that time, people thought that schools for children with disabilities were empowering, and some people still believe that. And then other people believe that people with disabilities should be integrated into the regular system. There are pros and cons to both ways. But Riva just tells her story of going to this school. And then she talks about being integrated into a regular high school because she did only go to that school till grade 8. She also went to university and colleges multiple times, but she was never able to finish a degree because of her health issues. She was often having to stop school to have an operation or because of different medical issues. She talks about her love life. She talks about she is bisexual. I mean, she never actually says if she's bisexual. She does refer to herself as a lesbian, but she did have a relationship with a man first. She's an artist, and so her life as an artist was very interesting to me. She currently paints portraits of people with disabilities, and she's done multiple bodies of work. She's taught, she's been a professor of art, so she's a very accomplished artist, I think. And the funny thing is, she actually painted a portrait of Nicola Griffith, who is the author of Menewood, which is one of the books I'm reading this month. So I thought that was very funny. I didn't do that on purpose. I didn't pick Menewood to read alongside Golem Girl because of the disability connection. I don't even think I was particularly aware that Nicola Griffith was in a wheelchair, but I did learn that once reading the back flap of the book. And anyway, I thought that was a nice connection. Serendipitous connection. So I really enjoyed this book. I think it is very eye-opening and so important to read books about people that are not like you and have a different experience of life. Riva's life and world was very complicated. It was really hard for her to do a lot of things And she told the story with a lot of honesty, with a lot of self-deprecation. She talks about the fact that she wasn't really aware about intersectionality around disability. So people with color who are disabled and how much harder it is for them. Riva herself is Jewish, and she came from a middle-class family. So she had a lot of things that benefited her from that, but also things that were hard for her from that. Yeah, it's a really great biography. It's very detailed. And near the end of the book, there is a section that includes writings by a lot of the artists and creatives that she painted portraits for. And what she did was ask them to talk about their experience of having her paint their portrait. And she does actually a lot of collaboration with these artists as well, where she allows the art. She was trying to play with the power dynamics of the portrait painter and the model. And so she allowed the models to interact with the pieces and change them and evolve them, giving them more agency in the process. And so it's a really interesting idea, not something I'd heard of before. And when she talks about it, it's quite interesting. So yeah, I think that it's a great book. I really enjoyed it. It's just so important, again, to learn about the disability community and to know that most of us at some point in our lives will become disabled and will be part of that community. So it encompasses a lot of different types of people. And when Riva talks about the people that she encounters, whether it's through activism, or through her art, she also relays some information about their disabilities, just to show like this very wide breadth of different types of people who function in our world, in an ableist world, in a world that is set up for, someone who sees, someone who moves easily, someone who can hear, all those types of ideas. So yeah, I'd recommend it. Okay, so as there's only 3 days left in this month, I am going to try to finish at least one more book to include in this reading wrap up. I have one, I am halfway through one. I've got, I don't know. I actually may have a DNF to tell you about. So November and I have not gotten along in terms of reading this month, but I will check in again and wrap you up on whatever else there is to wrap up from this month in a bit. Hey everyone. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be DNFing Flashlight by Susan Choi. This was on the short list for the Booker Prize this year in 2025. I have filmed a vlog about it, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. If you're interested in, hearing more about the book in depth, then you can go and see that vlog. This is will be my first reading vlog of a DNF. For me, I just got very bored in this book. The author's style is very detailed and minutiae, and I was actually planning to read right till the middle of the book, so finish the chapter I was in before I DNF'd it. But when she started getting into the minutiae of making spaghetti, I just couldn't keep going. I'm pretty disappointed that I didn't like this book more than this. I can't get on board with it. I can't care. I find that the characters to be quite so melancholy, so down all the time. There's very little goodness that happens. There's very little levity, and I know that books don't have to be light for me, but they do need something in them to keep me going, to keep me propelled. And this is supposed to be some sort of a mystery. Sook disappears, and I don't even care about that. I'm sure he's somewhere, but I don't care where he went. And to have the premise of the book be based on this mystery, but then to have gotten almost 200 pages in without any sort of furthering of that mystery. We find out right at the beginning that he disappears, and then we don't find out until, a good third of the way through. We don't get to that point. We go back and get up to where that point is, then it happens, and then we're past that point, but we move past that point quite quickly. I don't know. I can't keep reading this. It's just not landing with me, and I've been looking at this book for days and not picking it up and feeling no desire to keep going. And so I'm DNFing. So like I said, if you wanted to learn more about the book of what I've read, the first almost 200 pages, then you're welcome to check out the reading vlog. Yeah, that's me and Flashlight for this year. And I will check in again with you when I have hopefully finished one more book for this reading wrap up. Hey everyone. Okay, so my last finish of November, of the three books I finished in November, was Drawing Blood by Molly Crabapple. This is a memoir. And Molly Crabapple is this woman's assumed name. It's not her, she chose this name as kind of her public persona name. She grew up in New York and lived in New York most of her life, but she also traveled around. And she's an artist. This is obviously her work. She's an artist illustrator. There's a lot of her work in the book. So, the book is interspersed with illustrations of her travels, and she did travel a lot when she was young and was kind of looking for who she was and adventure and inspiration for her work. She would call herself, I think she grew up in a working class level, so I think the struggle for her being an artist in New York City and trying to survive was, making money, and being around a lot of the artists in New York are trust fund kids. They are funded by their parents, so they don't need to worry about making money. And she struggled a lot with that. She is a sex worker. So she did burlesque dancing and came of age in kind of the boom of the online, like MySpace, and like when online became, webcams and things like that for the sex industry. And so she talks a lot about that. She talks a lot about the dancers she met, the people she met in New York at this time. She talks about 9/11. And then she also talks about kind of political things. So the repercussions of 9/11, along with the Occupy movement that happened around 2011. She was involved in supporting a lot of the protesters, and she attended protests herself. She talks quite extensively about that, as well as becoming a journalist and becoming an illustrator, working in, she went to Guantanamo Bay. She participated in a lot of documentation of uprisings that were happening around 2011 and beyond. And then you also learn about her personal life, her relationships, her friendships, the kind of crazy debauchery of being young and living in cities. She also does a lot of work in London. So that is this. I thought it was very interesting. I wasn't aware of her work before putting this on my list. I just knew she was an artist, and so wanted to read it for that reason. I wouldn't say there was a lot of profound things said in this memoir. It's more about documenting her life and trying to come to terms with who she is, you know, coming of age, but also kind of that struggle. There is quite a bit in here about the struggle of being an artist. So I would say that was really interesting too, like trying to find work, trying to support herself based on her illustrations, trying to keep her inspiration flowing, and like painting in kind of furies of work, and then the kind of dry spells in between. And then also trying to negotiate the New York art scene where, you know, you have these fancy gallery artists, and then you have working artists who are doing more illustrative work. And then you have, you know, that kind of in between where she's representing a certain aesthetic and a certain group of people. In her work, she does a lot of work around of burlesque dancers and the kind of crazy club scene that was going on at a club called The Box in New York, which I was not familiar with, but you may be. Yeah, so that is Molly Crabapple's Drawing Blood. That is my November wrap-up. Yeah. I still can't believe I only read 3 books in November, but it is what it is. And there will probably be a lot more books to talk about in December. I want to thank you so much for watching, and I will be back again soon with another video.